I stood in my parents' living room, the same room where I'd spent countless holidays feeling like a ghost at my own family gatherings. But this time was different. This time, my father's finger was pointed directly at my face, trembling with rage. "Return the $50,000 or don't come back." His voice echoed off the cream-coloured walls, the same walls that had witnessed my quiet exits from birthday parties that were never really for me, from Christmas mornings where my gifts were always practical and forgettable, while my sisters were wrapped in excitement and expensive paper. Sarah stood beside him, arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her designer cardigan. She'd always known how to position herself, right next to Dad, right in the centre of everything, right where I'd never been allowed to stand. "You took Mom's money," she said, her voice sharp and certain. "We all know. Have you ever been accused of something by the people who were supposed to know you best? The people who were supposed to believe in you no matter what? If this story resonates with you, please subscribe and stay with me until the end. I promise you'll see justice served in ways you might not expect. My name is Madison. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the second daughter. Not the favourite, not the chosen one, just the other one, the invisible one. I work as a nurse at County General Hospital, pulling 12-hour shifts that leave my feet aching and my scrubs smelling like antiseptic and cafeteria coffee. I've lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment across town since I was 22, the year I finally accepted that staying close to home didn't mean they'd let me closer to their hearts. Sarah, my older sister by 3 years, has always been the golden child. Talented, charismatic, the kind of daughter who made our parents beam with pride at every PTA meeting, every recital, every graduation. She played piano, beautifully, I'll admit. She got straight A's without trying. She married a lawyer and moved into a house with a 3-car garage. And me, I was just Madison. The girl who tried hard but never quite measured up. The daughter who was there, technically, but never really seen. I remember being 10 years old, standing in my elementary school cafeteria in my carefully pressed white dress, waiting for my 5th grade graduation ceremony to start. I kept checking the doors, craning my neck to see if they'd arrive. Mum and Dad had promised they'd be there. They'd said it was important. But they never came. Later that night, when I walked through our front door with my certificate clutched in my hands, I found them in the kitchen helping Sarah prepare for her piano competition. It was 3 weeks away, but it was Sarah's competition, which meant it took precedence over everything, including me. "Oh, honey," Mom had said absently when she saw me. "How was the graduation thing?" The graduation thing. I'd smiled and said it was fine, then walked upstairs to my room and carefully placed my certificate in a drawer where no one would ever look for it. 6 years later, on my 16th birthday, I woke up hoping, stupidly, desperately hoping, that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year they'd remember that I existed, that I had dreams and wishes and a heart that kept breaking quietly in corners where no one was paying attention. I came downstairs to find Mom on the phone and Dad reading the newspaper. No decorations, no cake, no happy birthday, Madison. Sarah breezed in around noon, dropped her purse on the counter, and announced she needed $2,000 for a dress for her college formal. It was a designer gown, apparently, the kind that would photograph well. Dad pulled out his checkbook immediately. I stood there in my pajamas, waiting for someone to remember, waiting for someone to say, "Wait, isn't it Madison's birthday?" No one did. That night, I bought myself a cupcake from the grocery store and sang "Happy Birthday" alone in my room, the single candle casting shadows on walls covered with participation ribbons and honour roll certificates that no one had ever asked to see. When I was 19, I developed appendicitis. The pain hit me during my shift at the diner where I worked to pay for community college. My manager called an ambulance and I was rushed into emergency surgery. I woke up in a hospital room at 3 a.m, groggy and disoriented, with a nurse checking my vitals. My phone showed 6 missed calls, but they weren't from my parents. They were from my manager, asking if I'd be able to work the weekend shift. Mom and Dad showed up the next afternoon, stayed for 20 minutes, and spent most of that time on their phones coordinating Sarah's dorm room furniture delivery for her freshman year at State. Sarah was starting college in the fall. It was a big deal. Everything about Sarah was a big deal. I was discharged 2 days later. No one picked me up. I took an Uber home, climbed the stairs to my tiny apartment, and understood, finally, that I was on my own. I always had been. I thought I'd made peace with it. I thought I'd built a life that didn't need their validation, their attention, their love. I had my job. I had my patients who needed me. I had my small, quiet existence that asked nothing of anyone. And then 6 months ago, Mom died. It was a stroke, sudden, massive, fatal. She collapsed in the kitchen while making Sarah's favourite lemon pound cake for her birthday dinner. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was already gone. I found out 2 days later. 2 days. Sarah had my number. Dad had my number. But no one called. No one thought to let me know that our mother, my mother, had died until I happened to check Facebook and saw the funeral announcement that had been posted 8 hours earlier. The service is tomorrow, the post said. Family only. I drove through the night to get there, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my mind unable to process the fact that I'd lost my mother and no one had thought to tell me. I arrived at the funeral home in the clothes I'd worn to work, my scrubs stuffed in a bag in my trunk because I hadn't had time to go home and change. I walked into the viewing room and saw her, Mom, lying in a casket surrounded by white roses, her favourite. Sarah stood near the front with Dad, greeting visitors, accepting condolences, playing the role of the grieving family. I stood in the back. No one acknowledged me. No one hugged me or asked if I was okay or said, "Madison, we're so sorry we didn't call you." I was just there, a shadow among the flowers and the soft organ music and the murmured conversations about how sudden it had been, how tragic, how unfair. After the service, everyone gathered at the house for food and memories. I sat in a corner of the kitchen, eating potato salad and listening to relatives tell stories about Mom that I'd never heard before. Stories about her youth, her dreams, her secret love of old movies and chocolate-covered cherries. I wanted to share my own memories, but I realised I didn't have many. Mom had always been busy with Sarah. Mum had always been distracted. Mum had always been not quite there for me. That night, after everyone left, I tried to talk to Dad about the will, about Mum's wishes, about what would happen next. He'd waved me off. "It's all taken care of," he said. "Don't worry about it." And that was it. No discussion of inheritance, of keepsakes, of anything that might suggest I was part of this family. Sarah had already moved back home to help Dad through this difficult time, and I could see the way they looked at me, like I was an intruder, someone who'd shown up uninvited and overstayed her welcome. I left that night and didn't come back. For the next 6 months, I threw myself into work. I picked up extra shifts. I volunteered for the overnight rotation that no one else wanted. I kept my phone on silent because the rare times Dad or Sarah called, it was only to ask me to cover something, a bill they thought I should split, a storage unit they wanted me to help clean out, a family event they were obligated to invite me to, but clearly hoped I'd decline. I became a ghost in my own family. And the thing is, I was starting to be okay with it. I was starting to accept that some people are born into families where they belong, and some people are born into families where they're just there. But then, 3 weeks ago, something changed. I received a voicemail from Mr. Harrison, the family attorney I vaguely remembered from childhood. He'd handled my parents' estate planning, their business documents, all the legal matters that I was never privy to. "Madison," his voice said, formal and measured. "This is Robert Harrison. I need you to come to my office this Friday at 2 p.m. to discuss your mother's estate. It's important. Please confirm you've received this message." I stared at my phone, confused. The estate was handled. That's what Dad had said. Everything was taken care of, but Mr. Harrison's tone suggested otherwise. I called back and confirmed, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. Why would he need to see me? What was there to discuss? Had something gone wrong? Had someone contested something? The week crawled by. I couldn't focus at work. I kept playing the voicemail over and over, trying to read meaning into the spaces between his words. And then, the day before my scheduled appointment, I decided to stop by the house. Maybe to get answers, maybe to feel connected to something, even if that something had never really wanted me connected to it. I pulled into the driveway at 4 p.m. on a Thursday, the autumn sun casting long shadows across the lawn that Dad had always kept perfectly manicured. Sarah's car was parked in front of the garage, the same spot Mom used to park, a detail that felt both natural and wrong. I knocked. No answer. I used my old key, the one I'd kept on my keychain, even though I'd never once been invited back to use it, and pushed open the door. "Dad? Sarah?" My father appeared in the hallway, his face flushed, his eyes hard in a way I'd never seen before. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, her expression a mirror of his, and that's when it happened. That's when my father raised his hand, pointed his finger at my chest, and screamed the words that would change everything. "Return the $50,000 or don't come back." I froze. $50,000. What was he talking about? "Dad, don't lie to me," he roared. "We know what you did." Sarah stepped forward, her voice cold and cutting. "You took Mom's money. We all know." The room spun. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "I didn't take anything," I said quietly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mom's account," Sarah spat. $50,000, gone, transferred out a week before she died. And guess whose name is on the transaction? My heart hammered in my chest. What transaction? We're not stupid, Madison, Dad interrupted. You've been shut out of this family for a reason. You've always been jealous of Sarah, always resentful that we saw her for the daughter she was, and when Mom got sick, you swooped in and stole from her. The words hit me like physical blows. Jealous, resentful, stole. I didn't steal anything, I whispered. I didn't even know about any money. Then why is your name on the transfer? Sarah demanded. I don't know. You have until this weekend, Dad said, his voice low and dangerous. You bring that money back, or you're no longer my daughter. You hear me? No longer my daughter. Sarah nodded, satisfied. We've already talked to the police. If you don't return it, we're pressing charges. I looked at them, these people who were supposed to be my family, who were supposed to believe in me, and I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. They'd never believed in me. They'd never wanted to. I was always going to be the outsider, the scapegoat, the one they blamed when something went wrong, because it was easier than admitting they'd failed me. I'll figure this out, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But I didn't take anything from Mum. Friday, Dad said. You have until Friday. I turned and walked out of that house, my hands shaking, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall until I was safely in my car. As I drove away, I understood that this was it. This was the moment where I either let them destroy me or I found the strength to fight back. I'd been silent my whole life. I'd accepted being invisible, being forgotten, being the daughter who didn't matter. But not anymore. Not this time. The next morning I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I called in sick to work, something I never did, and spent the morning combing through every bank statement, every email, every piece of financial documentation I had. Nothing. There was no record of any transfer from Mum's account to mine, no mysterious deposits, no $50,000, but there was something, an email from my bank dated 7 months ago, informing me that a new account had been opened in my name. I'd dismissed it at the time as spam or a phishing attempt. I'd never opened a new account. Or had I? I called the bank and spent 2 hours on hold, then another hour being transferred from department to department before finally reaching someone who could help. "Yes, ma'am," the representative said. "We show an account opened on March 14th in your name. The account was funded with a transfer of $50,000 from an account belonging to Diane Harper." Diane Harper. My mother. "But I didn't open that account," I said. "The paperwork shows your signature, ma'am." "Can you check the signature? Compare it to my ID on file?" There was a pause, clicking, more pausing. "You're right," the representative said slowly. "The signatures don't match. It looks like someone may have forged your signature to open the account." My blood ran cold. "Can you tell me who opened it?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't disclose that information over the phone. You'll need to come into a branch with your ID and file a fraud report." I hung up and sat in my car in the bank parking lot, my mind racing. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had opened an account in my name. Someone had transferred Mum's money into that account and then blamed me for stealing it. But who? The answer hit me like a freight train, so obvious I almost laughed. Sarah. Sarah, who had access to all of Mum's financial information. Sarah, who'd moved back home and taken over all the household management. Sarah, who'd always gotten everything she wanted and couldn't stand the thought that Mom might have left me something. I walked into the bank, filed the fraud report, and requested copies of every document related to the account. The manager, a kind woman named Patricia, looked at the paperwork and frowned. "This is clearly not your signature," she said, "and the account activity shows the money is still there, untouched. Whoever opened this account hasn't accessed the funds." "Can I access them?" I asked. "Legally, yes. It's in your name, but given that there's a fraud claim, I'd recommend waiting until we complete the investigation." I thanked her and left, driving directly to Mr. Harrison's office for my 2 p.m. appointment. His office was in an old brick building downtown, the kind with polished wood floors and brass fixtures that spoke of old money and established trust. The receptionist showed me to a conference room where Mr. Harrison was waiting, a stack of files in front of him. He was in his early 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded me of my grandfather, the one family member who'd ever made me feel seen before he passed when I was 12. "Madison," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." I sat, my heart pounding. "I'm going to be direct with you," Mr. Harrison said. "Your mother came to see me 8 months before she passed away. She wanted to update her will." "I didn't know that," I said quietly. "She didn't want your father or sister to know. She specifically instructed me to keep the changes confidential until after her death." He opened the top file and slid a document across the table. It was a will, dated March 10th, 4 days before the mysterious account was opened. "Your mother left $50,000 to you," he said. "It was held in a separate account, one that your father didn't have access to. She wanted you to have financial security, Madison. She told me—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She told me that she regretted not standing up for you more, that she'd let your father and sister overshadow you, and she wanted to make amends." Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. "She left me money?" "Yes, and a letter." He handed me an envelope, sealed and marked with my name in Mom's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Madison," it began. "I know I've failed you. I know I've let you feel small and unimportant, and for that I am deeply sorry. Your father and sister don't understand you the way I wish I'd tried to understand you. They don't see your quiet strength, your compassion, your beautiful heart that keeps giving even when it receives nothing in return. This money is for you. Don't tell them about it. They wouldn't understand. They'd think you don't deserve it, but you do. You deserve so much more than I ever gave you. Build a life that makes you happy, sweetheart. Don't wait for their approval. Don't wait for them to finally see you. You've been visible all along. They just chose not to look. I love you. I hope you can forgive me. Mom." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The grief hit me all over again, but this time it was mixed with something else, a strange, painful kind of relief. She'd seen me. At the end, she'd finally seen me. "What happened to the money?" I asked, wiping my eyes. Mr. Harrison's expression darkened. "That's what I need to discuss with you. The transfer was made on March 14th, as your mother instructed. However, someone intercepted it. They forged your signature to open an account in your name and redirected the funds." "Sarah," I said. He nodded grimly. "I can't prove it yet, but I suspect your sister discovered the transfer when she was going through your mother's financial records. Rather than accept it, she created a way to make it look like you'd stolen the money. So she could keep it for herself. Or so she could force you to return money that was rightfully yours, making her and your father the victims." Rage burned through me, hot and clarifying. "What can I do?" Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "You have options. You can file charges for fraud and forgery. You can sue for emotional distress. Or," he paused, "or you can confront them yourself, with evidence, with me as a witness, and you can make them understand what they've done." "I want to confront them," I said immediately. "Are you sure? It won't be easy. They won't want to believe they're wrong." "I've spent my entire life being wrong in their eyes," I said, my voice steady. "Just once I want them to face the truth." Mr. Harrison smiled slightly. "Then let's prepare. We'll need documentation, the bank records, the forged signature comparison, your mother's will, her letter, and we'll need to choose the right moment." "This Sunday," I said. "I'll tell them I'm bringing the money, but what I'm really bringing is the truth." We spent the next 2 hours building the case. Mr. Harrison made copies of everything, organized it into a presentation folder, and coached me on how to handle the confrontation. "They're going to deny it," he warned. "They're going to say you're lying, that you fabricated evidence, that you're trying to hurt them." "I know. And even with proof, they may not apologize. People like your father and sister, they often double down rather than admit they're wrong." "I know," I said again, "but I need to do this. Not for them, for me." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then I'll be there with you, as your attorney and as a witness to what your mother wanted." I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. Not powerful in the way Sarah was powerful, loud, demanding, taking up space, but powerful in a quieter way. The power that comes from finally standing up for yourself. That night, I called Dad. "I'll be there Sunday at 3, I said, "with the money." "Good," he said curtly. "See that you are." He hung up before I could say anything else. Not that I expected more. My father had never been a man of many words, especially not with me. Saturday passed in a blur of nervous energy. I laid out the documents on my kitchen table over and over, memorizing every detail, every date, every signature. I practiced what I'd say, how I'd present the evidence, how I'd hold my composure when they inevitably attacked. Sunday morning, I woke up at dawn and couldn't go back to sleep. I showered, dressed in dark jeans and a simple sweater. Nothing fancy, nothing that suggested I was trying to impress them, and made myself eat breakfast even though my stomach was in knots. At 2:30, I loaded everything into my bag and drove to the house. Mr. Harrison was already there, parked down the street in his silver sedan. We'd agreed he'd wait 5 minutes after I went inside, then follow. The element of surprise would be crucial. I knocked on the door at exactly 3 p.m. Sarah opened it, her expression cold and triumphant. She was already savouring her victory, already imagining me handing over the money and begging for forgiveness. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I walked into the living room, where Dad sat on the couch, his arms crossed, his face set in hard lines. "You have the money?" he demanded. "I have something," I said, setting my bag on the coffee table. Sarah sat down next to Dad, the two of them a united front against me, the way they'd always been. "Well," Sarah said, "let's see it." I reached into my bag slowly, deliberately, and pulled out the first document. The bank statement showing the account opened in my name. "This is an account I didn't open," I said calmly. $50,000 were deposited into it on March 14th. "We know," Dad said. "That's the money you stole." "I didn't steal it," I said. "Someone else opened this account. Someone forged my signature." I laid the second document down, the signature comparison from the bank. "This is my signature," I said, pointing to my ID on file. "And this is the signature on the account opening forms. They don't match." Sarah's face flickered, just for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "That doesn't prove anything. You could have disguised your handwriting." "I could have," I agreed, "but I didn't." I pulled out the third document. "This is Mom's will, dated March 10th, 4 days before the account was opened." Dad reached for it, his hand shaking slightly. He read it once, then again, his face draining of colour. "She left you $50,000, he said hoarsely. "Yes." "Why wouldn't she tell us?" Sarah demanded, her voice rising. "Because she knew you'd react exactly like this," I said. I pulled out the letter. "She wrote this for me. Maybe you should read it." I handed it to Dad. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words, and I watched as something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, not yet, but confusion, doubt. Sarah grabbed the letter from his hands and read it, her face growing redder with each line. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "Mom wouldn't, she didn't." "She did," I said quietly. "She wanted me to have something that was mine, something you couldn't take." "But someone did take it," Dad said, looking up at me. "Someone opened that account." "Yes," I said. "Someone who had access to Mom's financial information. Someone who knew about the transfer. Someone who could forge my signature and make it look like I'd stolen the money." The implication hung in the air, heavy and damning. Sarah stood up abruptly. "You're accusing me?" "I'm stating facts," I said. "I would never, how dare you?" She sputtered, her mask finally cracking. The doorbell rang. All three of us froze. "I'll get it," I said, walking to the door. Mr. Harrison stood on the porch, briefcase in hand, his expression professionally neutral. "Hello, Madison," he said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." I stepped aside to let him in. "Not at all. I think your timing is perfect." We walked back into the living room, where Dad and Sarah stared at Mr. Harrison like he was a ghost. "Mr. Harrison," Dad said weakly, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here in my capacity as Mrs. Harper's attorney," he said, settling into a chair across from them, "and to verify the authenticity of the documents Madison has shown you." He opened his briefcase and pulled out his own set of files. "Everything Madison has told you is true. Your wife came to me 8 months before she passed away and specifically requested that $50,000 be set aside for Madison. She was very clear that this was not to be discussed with you or your other daughter." "But why?" Dad asked, and for the first time he sounded genuinely hurt. "Why would Diane hide this from me?" Mr. Harrison looked at him steadily. "Because she believed you wouldn't support her decision. She told me, and I quote, 'My husband has never seen Madison the way he sees Sarah. I need to do this for her while I still can.'" The words landed like bombs in the quiet room. Sarah sank back onto the couch, her earlier righteousness evaporating. "I also need to inform you," Mr. Harrison continued, "that the bank has confirmed the signature on the fraudulent account opening was forged. They're conducting an investigation into who opened it, and Madison would be well within her rights to press charges." "Press charges?" Dad repeated. "Against who?" "Against whoever forged her signature and attempted to frame her for theft," Mr. Harrison said. "The bank has surveillance footage from the branch where the account was opened. They're reviewing it now." Sarah's face went pale, absolutely pale, and in that moment we all knew. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until finally Dad turned to Sarah. "Tell me you didn't," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Sarah," Dad said, louder now, "tell me you didn't do this." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean... I was just trying to..." "To what?" I asked, my voice cutting through her excuses. "To steal money that Mom wanted me to have? To frame me for a crime I didn't commit? To make sure I stayed the invisible daughter who never got anything?" "You don't understand," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face now. "I've had to be perfect my whole life. I've had to carry this family's reputation, live up to everyone's expectations, and then Mom dies and I find out she left you who barely even comes around, $50,000. "So you decided I didn't deserve it," I said flatly. "I decided it wasn't fair," Sarah shouted. "Nothing about this is fair. I've done everything right, and you just coast through life, and somehow you're the one who gets rewarded." "Rewarded?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "Is that what you think this is? Mum left me that money because she felt guilty, because she knew she'd failed me, because even she understood that I'd spent my entire life being erased by this family." "That's not true," Dad said weakly. "It is true," I said, turning to him. "And you know it. You know you've always chosen Sarah over me, always believed her over me, always made me feel like I was the problem, the disappointment, the daughter who wasn't worth your time." "Madison, I never..." "You did," I interrupted. "Every single day of my life you did. And when Sarah accused me of stealing from Mom, you didn't even question it. You just believed I was capable of it. You believed I was that terrible of a person." Dad's face crumpled, and for a moment he looked like an old man, tired and defeated. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know you are," I said. "But sorry doesn't fix 32 years of being invisible. Sorry doesn't give me back all the birthdays and graduations and hospital rooms where I was alone. Sorry doesn't change the fact that even in death, Mom had to hide her love for me because she knew you wouldn't approve." I picked up my bag, carefully placing all the documents back inside. "The money is still in that account," I said. "I haven't touched it. But I'm going to now. I'm going to use it exactly the way Mom intended, to build a life where I'm not waiting for someone to finally see me. I looked at Mr. Harrison. Do I need to press charges? He glanced at Sarah, who was sobbing into her hands, and then at Dad, who looked broken. That's your decision, he said gently. I thought about it. I thought about justice and revenge and whether making them pay legally would make me feel any better. No, I said finally. I don't need to press charges. I just need them to know the truth and to live with it. I walked toward the door, and this time I didn't look back. Madison, wait, Dad called out. But I was already gone. I sat in my car outside the house for a full 10 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. Mr. Harrison had followed me out, his expression a mixture of concern and professional satisfaction. You handled that remarkably well, he said through my open window. I don't feel remarkable, I admitted. I feel like I'm going to throw up. He smiled gently. That's normal. You've just confronted 32 years of injustice in one afternoon. Give yourself time to process it. What happens now? I asked. Now you take control of your life. The money is yours, legally and morally. Use it wisely. He paused. And Madison, your mother would be proud of you, not for the confrontation, but for finally standing up for yourself. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying again. As I drove away, my phone buzzed incessantly. Dad calling, Sarah calling, Dad texting, Sarah texting. I turned my phone to silent and kept driving. The next morning, I walked into the bank where the fraudulent account had been opened. Patricia, the manager who'd helped me before, greeted me with a warm smile. I heard you had quite the weekend, she said, leading me to her office. You could say that. Well, I have good news. The fraud investigation has been completed, the forged signatures have been documented, and we've cleared your name of any wrongdoing. The account is officially yours, and you're free to access the funds. She slid a folder across her desk. Inside were clean bank statements, transfer authorizations, and a letter from the bank's legal department confirming that I was the rightful owner of the $50,000. What about my sister? I asked quietly. Patricia's expression became carefully neutral. The bank has decided not to pursue criminal charges, given that the funds were never actually stolen and the account has been transferred to your control. However, we've flagged her information in our system. She won't be able to open accounts or conduct business with our institution again. It was a small consequence for what she'd done, but somehow it felt right. Sarah would have to live with the knowledge that she'd been caught, exposed, that her perfect facade had cracked wide open. Thank you, I said. One more thing, Patricia added. I took the liberty of setting up a meeting with one of our financial advisors. You have options for how to use this money, investments, savings accounts, or simply keeping it accessible for immediate needs. Would you like to explore those options? I thought about Mom's letter, about her hope that I'd build a life that made me happy. Yes, I said. I'd like that very much. Over the next 3 days, I met with the financial advisor, a sharp woman named Karen who helped me create a plan. Half the money would go into a high-yield savings account as an emergency fund. A quarter would be invested in a diversified portfolio for long-term growth. And the remaining quarter, that was my freedom money. The money that would let me make the changes I'd been too afraid to make before. I requested a 2-week leave from the hospital, something I'd never done in 10 years of working there. My supervisor was surprised, but supportive. You never take time off, Madison, she said. Go, rest, figure out what you need. What I needed, I realized as I drove home that evening, was space. physical space between me and everything that had happened. I needed to think, to breathe, to decide who I wanted to be now that I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's rejection anymore. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. I'd been checking it periodically, watching the missed calls and unread messages pile up. Dad had called 17 times. Sarah had called 12. There were voicemails I hadn't listened to, texts I hadn't read, but this call was from Mr. Harrison. "Madison," he said when I answered, "I wanted to give you a heads up. Your father came to my office this morning." My stomach dropped. What did he want? He wanted to know if there was any way to challenge your mother's will, to contest the money she left you. Can he do that? No, Mr. Harrison said firmly. The will is ironclad. Your mother was of sound mind when she wrote it. It was properly witnessed and notarized, and the money came from an account that was solely in her name. He has no legal standing. But he tried anyway. He did. I think... Mr. Harrison paused. I think he's trying to regain some sense of control. This situation has forced him to see things about himself and his family that he doesn't want to see. Challenging the will is easier than facing the truth. What did you tell him? I told him that if he continues to harass you or attempts any legal action, I would be forced to recommend that you pursue charges against Sarah for fraud and forgery. That seemed to quiet him down. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Madison, I need to ask you something. What do you want to happen with your family? Do you want reconciliation? Do you want distance? Because whatever you decide, I'll support you. But you need to know what you're willing to accept. I sat with that question for a long moment. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know I don't want things to go back to the way they were. I'm done being invisible. Good, he said. Don't settle for less than you deserve. After we hung up, I finally opened the text messages. Dad's were apologetic, rambling, desperate. Madison, please call me. We need to talk. I made a mistake. We all made mistakes. You're still my daughter, please. Sarah's were more defensive. I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand the pressure I've been under. Dad's been so hard on me since Mom died. I just wanted to make things right. Can we talk? I deleted them without responding. That night I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments in Portland, 3 hours north. I'd always loved Portland, the coffee culture, the bookstores, the way the city felt both energetic and peaceful at the same time. I'd visited once during nursing school and thought, I could live here. Now maybe I could. I found a cozy one-bedroom in the Pearl District, available immediately. The rent was higher than what I was paying now, but with Mom's money as a cushion, I could afford it. I could afford to take my time finding a new job, to explore the city, to build a life that was entirely mine. I filled out the application and hit submit before I could second-guess myself. 3 days later, I got the apartment. I gave notice at my current place, packed up my belongings, which wasn't much, just books and clothes and a few pieces of furniture I'd collected over the years, and hired movers for the following week. I didn't tell Dad or Sarah I was leaving. I didn't owe them that information. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after the confrontation, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my first instinct was to ignore it. But something made me look through the peephole. Sarah stood on my doorstep, her face blotchy and tear-stained, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I considered not opening the door. I considered letting her stand there until she gave up and left. But curiosity won out. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice hoarse. "Please, just 5 minutes." "You have 3, I said, crossing my arms. She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I know you don't believe me, and you don't have to, but I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. I was angry and hurt, and I took it out on you, and that was unfair. Unfair? I repeated. You tried to frame me for theft. You forged my signature. You were willing to let me be arrested, to have a criminal record, to destroy my life, because you couldn't handle the fact that Mum loved me too. I know, she whispered. I know, and I hate myself for it. I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect, trying to be what Mum and Dad wanted, and it still wasn't enough. And then I found out about the money, and I snapped. So you decided to make me the villain? Yes. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see how we treated you, how I treated you, and I'm ashamed. You should be, I said coldly. Dad's a mess, she continued. He can't sleep. He can't eat. He keeps saying he failed you, that he failed Mom. He wants to make things right. He can't, I said simply. Some things can't be fixed, Sarah. You can't give me back my childhood. You can't erase 32 years of making me feel worthless. And you can't expect me to just forgive and forget, because now, suddenly you feel bad. I'm not asking you to forget, she said. I'm asking if there's any way we can start over. If there's any chance you'd let us be a family again. I looked at my sister, this woman who'd had everything I'd ever wanted, who'd taken it for granted, who'd been willing to destroy me rather than share even a fraction of what she had. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not love, not even pity. Just emptiness where a relationship should have been. No, I said quietly. There's no chance. You and Dad had my whole life to be a family to me, and you chose not to. I'm not giving you another opportunity to hurt me. Madison. I'm moving to Portland, I said. I'm starting over somewhere you and Dad aren't. I'm building a life where I don't have to beg for scraps of attention or wonder why I'm never good enough. And I'm doing it without you. Sarah's face crumpled. Please don't do this. Please. You're my sister. I'm the person you tried to send to jail, I corrected. There's a difference. I stepped back and closed the door, locking it firmly. Sarah stood on the other side for a long time. I could see her shadow through the peephole before finally walking away. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt free. The next week passed in a blur of packing and paperwork and final shifts at the hospital. My co-workers threw me a small goodbye party, surprised by my sudden decision to relocate, but supportive nonetheless. You deserve a fresh start, my supervisor said, hugging me goodbye. Go be happy. On moving day, I loaded the last box into the truck and took one final look at the apartment that had been my refuge for so many years. It had been small and lonely, but it had been mine. Now I was trading it for something bigger, something with the possibility of not being lonely anymore. I drove north on I-5, watching the familiar landscape of home fade in my rearview mirror. The sky was overcast, typical Oregon weather, but it felt right, like the world was giving me permission to start fresh under a clean grey slate. Portland welcomed me with rain and the smell of coffee. My new apartment was on the 3rd floor of a renovated warehouse, with exposed brick walls and huge windows overlooking the city. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was nothing like the life I'd left behind. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a routine. I explored the city, tried new restaurants, visited Powell's books, and spent hours getting lost in the aisles. I joined a yoga studio and started going to classes 3 times a week. I made small talk with baristas and neighbours, slowly building connections that felt genuine because they weren't weighted down by history. I also started looking for work. Several hospitals in the area were hiring, and my experience at County General made me a competitive candidate. I interviewed at 3 different places before accepting a position at Providence Portland Medical Center, working in their oncology unit. The job was challenging but rewarding. My patients needed me in a way that felt pure, not obligated, not guilty, just human connection between people navigating difficult circumstances. 1 month after I moved, Dad called. I'd blocked his old number, but he called from a different phone. I answered before realizing who it was. "Madison," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Please don't hang up." I considered it. My finger hovered over the end call button. "You have 2 minutes," I said. "I've been going to therapy," he said. After everything happened, I realized I needed help. I needed to understand why I treated you the way I did, why I couldn't see what I was doing to you. "And?" I asked, my voice neutral. And I'm learning that I projected all my own insecurities onto you. You reminded me of myself, quiet, uncertain, not naturally charismatic like your mother and Sarah. And instead of loving you for who you were, I tried to make you invisible because you made me uncomfortable. It was more insight than I'd ever expected from my father, but it didn't change anything. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said. "But that doesn't fix what you did." "I know," he said quickly. "I know it doesn't, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see you now, and I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry." "Okay," I said. "Okay?" he repeated. "That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Dad? That I forgive you? That we can go back to having Sunday dinners and pretending we're a normal, functional family?" "No, He paused. "I guess I wanted to hear that there's a chance. That maybe someday we could have some kind of relationship." I looked out my apartment window at the Portland skyline, at the life I was building brick by brick. "Maybe," I said. "But not now, not for a long time. I need space to figure out who I am without spending all my energy trying to be someone you'd finally notice." "I understand," he said quietly. "Can I call you again in a few months?" "You can try," I said, "but I might not answer." "That's fair." We hung up, and I felt lighter, not because I'd forgiven him, I hadn't, but because I'd set a boundary and held it. I'd told my father the truth, and the world hadn't ended. 2 weeks later, I received a package. It was from Sarah, no return address, just my name and my new address, which meant she'd gone through considerable effort to find me. Inside was a photo album I'd never seen before, page after page of pictures from my childhood. Me at 5, covered in finger paint and grinning at the camera. Me at 8, holding up a trophy from a spelling bee I'd won. Me at 13, dressed for the school dance I'd gone to alone because no one had asked me. There was a note tucked in the front. "I found these in Mum's closet. She kept them separate from the family albums. I think she wanted you to know she saw you, even when the rest of us didn't. I'm sorry I couldn't see you too. S." I sat on my couch and looked through every single photo, tears streaming down my face. Mum had seen me. She'd documented my life, my small victories, my quiet moments of joy. She just hadn't been brave enough to fight for me out loud. I put the album on my bookshelf, next to the letter she'd written me. They were my proof that I'd mattered to someone, even if that someone had failed me in other ways. 3 months into my new life in Portland, I met someone. Her name was Jenna, and she was a librarian at the main branch downtown. We struck up a conversation in the coffee shop next door, bonding over our shared love of mystery novels and terrible puns. "I'm new to the city," I told her, "still figuring out where everything is." "I've lived here my whole life," she said with a warm smile. "I'd be happy to show you around if you want a local's perspective." We started meeting for coffee once a week, then twice a week. Then we were texting daily and making plans to try every food cart in the city. Jenna was easy to be around, funny, kind, with no hidden agendas or complicated family dynamics weighing her down. One evening, as we walked through the Japanese garden, she asked me about my family. "We're not close," I said carefully. "Do you want to be?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Did I want to reconcile with Dad and Sarah? Did I want to rebuild something from the ashes of what had never really existed? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks I should. That family is family, and you're supposed to forgive and move on. But another part of me knows that some relationships are toxic, and it's okay to walk away. Both parts can be true, Jenna said gently. You can acknowledge that they're your family and still choose not to have them in your life. Those aren't mutually exclusive. It was the permission I hadn't known I needed. "Thank you," I said. She squeezed my hand. "For what?" "For seeing me," I said. "For not making me feel like I have to justify my choices or prove that I deserve to take up space." "Madison," she said, stopping to look at me directly, "you've always deserved to take up space. Some people were just too self-absorbed to notice." That night, I went home and wrote a letter. Not to Dad or Sarah, but to myself. To the little girl who'd waited for her parents to show up to graduation, to the teenager who'd celebrated her birthday alone, to the young woman who'd survived appendicitis without anyone by her side. "You survived," I wrote. "You survived being invisible, being forgotten, being treated like you didn't matter. And now you're building a life where you matter to yourself, where you don't need someone else's validation to know you're worthy. You're doing it. Keep going." I folded the letter and tucked it into Mom's photo album, a promise to that little girl that she'd never be invisible again. On a rainy Tuesday in December, 6 months after I'd walked out of my father's house, I received a text from an unknown number. "This is Sarah. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that Dad had a heart attack. He's stable now, in the hospital. I thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling complicated, not devastated, not rushing to book a flight home, just complicated. I called Mr. Harrison. "I heard," he said when I told him. "I visited him yesterday. He's going to be fine, Madison. It was mild, and the doctors say he'll make a full recovery with lifestyle changes." "Should I go see him?" I asked. "Do you want to?" "No," I said honestly, "but I feel like I should want to." "You're allowed to not want to," Mr. Harrison said. "You're allowed to protect yourself, even from situations that society says you should handle differently. Your father made choices for 32 years. You're allowed to make choices now." I sent Sarah a text back. "I'm glad he's okay, but I'm not coming home." She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. Christmas came and went. Jenna invited me to spend it with her family, a loud, chaotic, loving mess of siblings and cousins, and inside jokes I didn't understand yet, but was welcomed into anyway. Her mother hugged me when we arrived and said, "Any friend of Jenna's is family to us." Family. I was learning that family could be chosen, not just assigned, that it could be built on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of obligation and shared DNA. On New Year's Eve, Jenna and I sat on my apartment balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching fireworks explode over the city. "What are you hoping for this year?" she asked. I thought about it. A year ago, I would have said, "I hope my family finally sees me." But now, "I hope I keep seeing myself," I said. "I hope I keep building a life that makes me happy. I hope I stop waiting for permission to exist." "I think you've already started," Jenna said, leaning her head on my shoulder. And she was right. I had started. Not with a dramatic moment or a sudden epiphany, but with small, consistent choices to prioritize my own well-being, to value my own judgment, to believe that I was worth the space I took up. In February, I used part of Mum's money to enroll in a nurse practitioner program. It was something I'd always wanted to do, but had never felt secure enough to pursue. Now, with financial stability and a clear vision of my future, I could invest in myself. My first day of classes, I sat in the lecture hall and felt proud. Not because I was proving something to Dad or Sarah, but because I was proving something to myself, that I was capable, that I was worthy, that I could build the life I wanted without waiting for someone else to approve it. That spring, Dad called again. This time I answered. "Madison," he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness or to convince you to come home. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you." I waited, suspicious of where this was going. "Sarah told me you're in a nurse practitioner program, that you moved to Portland and started over, and I'm proud of you for having the courage to do that." "Thank you," I said carefully. "I failed you," he continued. "I know I've said that before, but I'm starting to really understand it now. I failed you as a father, and I let Sarah fail you as a sister, and I let your mother fail you by not standing up to us, and I can't fix that. But I want you to know that I see it. I see what we did to you." "Okay," I said. "I'm not asking for anything," Dad said. "I just wanted you to know that I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I understand if you've built a life that doesn't include me. You deserve that life, Madison. You deserve to be happy." We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized something. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't even resent him. I just felt distant, like he was a character in a story I'd moved on from. "I don't hate you, Dad," I said quietly, "but I don't know if I'll ever be able to have a relationship with you. Too much has happened. Too many years of feeling invisible." "I know," he said, "and I accept that. Maybe someday," I said, surprising myself. "Maybe in a few years we can try coffee or something, but not now. I'm not ready." "I'll be here when you are," he said. "If you are, and if you're not, I understand that too." We hung up, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of closure. A recognition that my father was a flawed human being who'd hurt me deeply but was trying, in his limited way, to do better. That was enough. Not to reconcile, but to let go of the anger that had been weighing me down. The following summer, exactly 1 year after the confrontation in my father's living room, I sat in my Portland apartment, now decorated with plants and art, and evidence of a life being lived fully, and reflected on how far I'd come. I had friends, real friends who called to check in, who invited me to dinner parties, who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges. I had a career I was passionate about, with patients who trusted me and colleagues who respected me. I had Jenna, whose love was steady and uncomplicated, and made me feel seen in ways I'd never experienced before. And I had myself. The Madison who'd spent 32 years waiting for someone to notice her had transformed into the Madison who no longer needed that validation, who knew her own worth, who'd built a life that reflected her values and her dreams. I opened my laptop and wrote an email to Mr. Harrison. "Dear Mr. Harrison, I wanted to thank you for everything you did for me. Not just the legal support, but the emotional support too. You helped me see that I deserved better, and you gave me the tools to fight for it. I'm happy now, really truly happy. I'm using Mum's money exactly the way she wanted, to build a life that makes me proud. I think she'd be pleased. I'm not sure if I'll ever reconcile with my father and sister. Some days I think I might be open to it, far in the future. Other days I know I'm better off with the distance. But either way, I'm at peace with my decision. Thank you for helping me find that peace. With gratitude, Madison. He responded within an hour. Dear Madison, your mother would be incredibly proud of the woman you've become. I knew her for 25 years, and I can tell you with certainty that all she ever wanted was for you to be happy and free. You've achieved both. That's no small feat. If you ever need anything, legal advice, a reference, or just someone to talk to who understands your history, I'm here. Keep building your beautiful life. With warmth, Robert Harrison. I printed his email and put it in the photo album next to Mom's letter. Proof that someone had believed in me. Proof that I'd been worth fighting for. That evening, Jenna and I walked through the neighbourhood, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. We passed families having dinner on their porches, couples walking their dogs, children playing in the fading summer light. Do you ever miss them? Jenna asked. Your family? Sometimes, I admitted. But I think I miss the idea of them more than the reality. I miss having a family that loved me unconditionally, but I never actually had that. So what I'm missing is something that never existed. That must be hard, she said. It was, I agreed. But it's getting easier because I'm learning that family doesn't have to be the people you're born to. It can be the people you choose, like you, like your family, who welcomed me, like my friends here. Like us, she said, squeezing my hand. Like us, I echoed. We stopped at our favourite coffee shop, ordered our usual drinks, and sat on the patio watching the sun set over the city. And in that moment, surrounded by the life I'd built from nothing, I realised something profound. I was no longer the girl who'd been kicked out of her family's house. I was the woman who'd walked out on her own terms and never looked back. That night, as I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked, the way no one in my family ever had. You did it, I whispered to my reflection. You saved yourself. And for the first time in 32 years, the woman looking back at me smiled like she believed it. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong in your own family? Like you were invisible, overlooked, forgotten? I spent most of my life feeling that way. But I learned something important. You don't need other people to validate your existence. You don't need your family's approval to build a life worth living. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is choose yourself. To everyone who's ever felt like the invisible child, the forgotten sibling, the family member who doesn't quite fit, you're not alone. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to take up space in this world. And if your family can't give you that, it's okay to find people who can. It's okay to build your own family from scratch. It's okay to start over. You're worthy of love, not because of what you do or who you are to someone else, but simply because you exist. Don't ever forget that. 3 months later, on a crisp October morning, I walked into my first day as a licensed nurse practitioner. I'd passed my boards with flying colours, accepted a position at a community health clinic that served underserved populations, and felt more fulfilled than I ever had working at County General. My first patient was a young woman about my age who reminded me painfully of my younger self. Quiet, apologetic, shrinking herself to avoid taking up too much space. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, eyes downcast. "I know you're busy." "You're not bothering me," I said gently, pulling up a chair so I was at her eye level instead of standing over her. "You deserve care and attention. Tell me what's going on." As I listened to her, as I provided the compassionate, thorough care that I'd always wanted to give, I understood why Mum's money had been so important. Not because of the dollar amount, but because it had given me the freedom to become the person I was always meant to be. A person who saw others the way I'd longed to be seen. A person who made space for people who'd never been given space before. A person who'd broken the cycle of invisibility that had defined my childhood. That evening, I called Jenna on my way home. "How was your first day?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. "Absolutely perfect." "I'm proud of you," she said, and I heard the smile in her voice. "Thank you," I said, "for everything, for seeing me, for loving me, for helping me believe I was worth all of this." "Madison," she said softly, "you were always worth it. I just had the privilege of being there when you finally realized it yourself." I hung up and drove through the city that had become my home, watching the lights come on as dusk settled over Portland. And I thought about the girl I'd been a year ago, scared, hurt, invisible, and the woman I'd become. I'd given my parents a reason to mean it when they told me not to come home, because I'd finally found a place where I belonged, where I was wanted, where I was seen. And that place wasn't a house or a city or even a relationship. It was inside myself. It had been there all along, waiting for me to notice.